Ayrton Senna. The expected spoilers from Ferrari dropped out. First Gerhard Berger and then Nigel Mansell, leaving the McLaren duo to fight it out alone. Senna had to win to keep his title hopes alive. With 6 laps to go, he tried to pass Prost. The 2 cars tangled. Prost was knocked out. Senna restarted and won the race. But Senna had cut the course in the accident. After much discussion, officials disqualified him, handing victory to Italian Sandro Nannini, the first win in his Formula One career. The decision not only pushed Senna off the podium, it knocked the defending world champion out of the title race. Alain Prost took his 3rd world championship. Today, they race as teammates for the last time. ESPN, celebrating its 10th year as world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. For the first time in memory, 2 Formula One races have an opportunity to decide one year's world champion. Either way, the 1989 series ends today with the Grand Prix of Australia. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha, welcoming you to the facilities of Australian television here in Adelaide, for the simple reason that our racetrack is being washed by showers this morning. And it's a weather condition that matches the mood early in the week here in Australia. You've already seen the events 2 weeks ago in Japan, but that was just the beginning of the story. When Ayrton Senna went to Paris last week to protest his disqualification from the Japanese race, he was stunned to find that in addition to his DQ, he had been slapped with a $100,000 fine and a possible 6-month suspension from driving. It was enough of a situation to make any good international lawyer go reaching for his business cards, and in fact, in a series of emotional press conferences here this week in Adelaide, both Senna and McLaren team director Ron Dennis vowed to fight to the finish, even in the civil courts if necessary, while Alain Prost, who will leave McLaren for Ferrari next year, announced that he thinks that he is the target of his own team's appeal.
We went there expecting to defend a case of shoplifting, and we were faced defending car theft, shoplifting, rape, murder and pillage. I don't know how anyone was expected to prepare their case well.
I know that deep inside the situation we face the last few days and at the moment only motivates me deep inside to fight against it and to prove that what I'm doing there is a reason for, and what I'm doing has values, and only motivates me to fight right to the end at any cost, and whatever happens, that maybe once we can bring some justice to the sport and to our activity.
For sure the ambience is even a bit worse because one way or the other the appeal is against me, you know, and it's very difficult for me to accept that, because what I've done for the team in the last 6 years is quite important, and I recognize that they have done a fantastic job for me too.
The International Motorsports Governing Body declined our invitation to comment on the matter, but the bottom line is this: unless Ayrton Senna can win this Australian Grand Prix fair and square, the World Championship will irrevocably go with Alain Prost to Ferrari next year. Should Senna win here today, the question of whether in fact he has defended his World Championship will take a long time to play out. To their credit, once engines fired for practice and qualifying on Friday, both McLaren drivers put the arguments behind them and swept the front row for the 12th time in 16 races this year, led by Mr. Senna's record-tying 13th pole position. But the Australian Grand Prix is an event that is many things to many people. And for more on that, we turn to our party-going colleague, Dinkaroo David Hobbs, who's suffering from a bit of an Australian springtime cold here. David, how's the voice?
The voice is terrible, Bob. It must have been all that dust that's been kicked up in the paddock the last 2 days. I had my party hat on, ready to go visit some of the luxury suites here in Adelaide, because this race is fast becoming the glamour race of the year, eclipsing Monte Carlo. And in spite of the weather today, it is spring down here in the Antipodes. And of course, spring is a season of change, heralding new life and colour. And we've got some new hot blood on the grid today. John Alesi, in only his 8th Grand Prix start, is a staggering 9th in the points this year. And J.J. Leto, in only his 2nd Grand Prix start, is right in the middle of the pack. Well, it may be spring down here, but in Europe and North America, it's fall. and the chill winds of fall are blowing around people like Eddie Cheever, John Palmer, Luis Peresala, Ginzani, who will not be seen in Grand Prix racing in 1990. And also René Arnoux. We're saying au revoir to him today after a tremendous career, and still after some lackluster seasons. He is 5th in the all-time point standings. With more on today's race action, let's go down to John Visignano.
Thank you very much, David. I'm very happy for you up there in that nice, warm, dry booth, because it's absolutely wet, totally wet down here in the pits. It's been raining for some time, the first rain all weekend long. Now, they gave the F1 drivers an extra half-hour practice before the start of this Grand Prix, and there were so many accidents that they actually had to red flag it twice, and it never did get through the full half hour. Mansell went off. He is in the infirmary right now. The Ferrari people don't even know if he's going to be able to start. Benetton has destroyed a car. Other people are still stuck out in the sand. It's a bit of confusion down here, and it's a bit sad because a race car driver, his most important event of the year is his last race. It's the one everyone remembers. Now, a lot of people wanted to do well here. They were trying very hard. We have 19 cars within 2 seconds of one another on this Adelaide grid. I wouldn't miss the first corner of watching this or the next 2 hours for anything in the world. They are going to be slipping and sliding all around this Adelaide Australian Grand Prix circuit.
And there's still time to grab something good to eat before we get underway. After 15 races in 14 countries, it's time for the final round of the World Driving Championship. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Australia is brought to you by Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor. And get ready for the final green light of the 1989 Formula One season when we return to Adelaide.
Australia, where the weather is quickly going from bad to worse. We'll give you a look at present conditions, 59 degrees. The light wind has come down to about nothing, but what there is blowing at the drivers' backs as they come down the pit straightaway. The humidity 100%, and that, folks, is an understatement. The forecast is for continuing showers the rest of the day. And while we await the signal to fire engines, here's a way they'll line up for today's final round of the Formula One World Championship. Only 3 men have garnered 26 poles in Formula One competition. Brazilian Ayrton Senna has done that in just 2 years. Today's pole is his 42nd. Next to him on the front row will be his McLaren Honda teammate and arch enemy, Alain Prost of France, who must win this race or hope someone beats Senna in order to clinch his world championship, legally or otherwise. On row 2 will be the Minardi of Italian Pierluigi Martini, back from the rib injury that knocked him aside in Japan. Next to him, the Benetton Ford of Italian Sandro Nannini, the surprise winner in Japan. Row 3 will be all Williams-Renault. Terry Boutsen of Belgium will be inside in the 5th position. Next to him, Italian Riccardo Patrese. Engine problems for Williams this week. Row 4 will be the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell. The Ferrari team having a terrible weekend. The Brabham Judd of Italian Stefano Modena will be next to Mansell. Row 5 will be Andrea De Cesaris of Italy in the BMS Dallara with Ford power. Next to him, his Italian countryman and Dallara teammate, young Alex Caffey. Row 6 will be Nicola Larini of Italy for Osella, and next to him from Great Britain, Martin Brundle with the first of 2 Brabham cars in the field. Row 7 will be Emanuele Pirro of Italy in the Benetton next to Gerhard Berger, not used to seeing the Austria that far back for Ferrari. Row 8 will be Jean Alesi, a great street racer from France in the Tyrrell, next to the March of Italian Ivan Capelli. Row 9 will be J.J. Leto, the young Finn for Onyx, next to the Lotus of 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet. Row 10 will be Philippe Alliot of France in the Lola, next to the Arrows of Derek Warwick from Great Britain. Row 11, Piercarlo Gonzani in his final race in Formula One, the Italian driving for Osella. Next to him, American Eddie Cheever in what may be his final Formula One appearance. Row 12 will be Satoru Nakajima of Japan, next to Olivier Griard of France. And row 13, Maurizio Gugelmin of Brazil for March, and René Arnoux retiring after this race at the age of 41, the Frenchman driving for Ligier. The drivers who missed the cut include Dr. Jonathan Palmer of Great Britain for Tyrrell, Luis Perisala of Spain in the Minardi, both Reals of Bertrand Gachot and Pierre-Henri Raffanel, the Onyx of Stefan Johansson of Sweden, the Lola of Michele Alboreto from Italy, Bernd Schneider and Aguri Suzuki in their Zach Speeds, the Colonis of Roberto Moreno and Enrico Bertaggia, the Eurobrune of Oscar Larari of Argentina, Yannick Dalmas and Gabriele Tarquini of Italy for the AGS team. This Adelaide street course is among the trickiest tracks in the world, and today's rain won't help. David took a look at it under dry conditions, and here's his turn-by-turn analysis.
The street course here in Adelaide is 2.3 miles with 16 corners, and at the qualifying speed yesterday afternoon of just under 110 miles an hour is by far the fastest of the street courses. Let's go around for qualifying lap with Eddie Cheever, probably one of his last qualifying laps in Formula One, as he crosses the line at about 150 and swings to that left-right and then left-hand complex here as he goes to the first three corners. Up Wakefield Street, hard on the brakes, turns back onto East Terrace, flips the curb, bad adverse camber there, and you can see how these street courses are so bumpy as you keep going over the curves, and of course you get it confused with the camber of the road, which keeps changing. Back onto East Terrace. Up to the box once, then he swings left and right here, stays in the same gear. You can see all the people gathered there in the balconies of these houses right by the track. Turns right onto Rundle Street here, second fastest part of the racetrack. Up to fifth gear, then hard on the brakes, down to fourth, quick flick here onto Forgetfield Terrace, which today is Brabham Straight. This is the fastest part of this course, up to 6 speed and about 170 miles an hour. As he flashes under the Foster's Bridge there, and of course there's a mass of people here today, come from all over the Australian continent. Turns right, back onto Wakefield Street, under the gum trees there, casting a lot of shadows, and then turns left into the Victoria Park Racecourse. Normally, this is a racecourse here, horse races, crosses the racetrack, swings right here, up to fifth gear again, pretty fast right-hand sweep, hard on the brakes, down to second gear as he takes the right onto pit straight in front of the huge crowd, up the curve there, Eddie using all the road he possibly can to qualify yesterday afternoon.
Engines have been fired, and the cars are on the rainy racetrack. We'll take a quick time out and give you a look at the Pick 6 as we do it. John, David, and I all see Ayrton Senna to win here and take the World Championship to the courts. Prost to finish second. David likes Nannini in third. John and I will take Mansell. We will return to Adelaide. This race, but there is chaos out on the grid. Not all of the cars are prepared to start. Let's go quickly to John Bizignano.
Only half the cars are on the grid, and the green light goes off. Senna and Prost streaking down the straightaway in a whole huge bunch of mist and water. Half the people have not even come around the track for the first lap. More controversy, I can't believe it. Everybody, of course, is on rain tires, very soft settings, big wings. They're looking for downforce. We had one car, the Chrysler Lamborghini Lola, actually start from the pit lane just to avoid the mayhem, but I'm afraid he is totally sandwiched at this time. Back to you guys.
I cannot believe the circumstances. As John mentioned, you saw both of the Ligiers of Brenny Arnoux and Olivier Gouillard had tangled with each other on this rain-soaked racetrack. John said it, half of the cars were not even on the grid. Gerhard Berger went past the start-finish line, passing the fire truck that was following the leaders. It is absolute bedlam here in Adelaide. Nevertheless, Ayrton Senna, the acknowledged rainmeister of Formula One, is on the Brabham backstretch, and watch that car slide out from under him.
And Senna again made an incredible start because Prost got away well and truly in front of Senna, but going into that first chicane, Senna just whistled by him, which of course, in view of the 6-month suspension hanging over his head, was one of those questions we were asking ourselves before this race. How is Senna going to drive in the race? I mean, can he drive carefully? Obviously the answer is no.
Bob Varsha, David Hobbs, obviously working under a severe handicap with a spring cold here in Adelaide that has taken away his voice. Your leader is Ayrton Senna. You see the gap in the background of the second-place car of Alain Prost, and he has pitted. Prost has pitted. Now,
This is a protest.
This could very well be a protest. John mentioned before the race got underway, we were taken by surprise at the start because many of the drivers went to the start-finish line and asked the FISA officials and the starter not to get the race underway. They were told to go back to their cars. They got in, the race started in absolute bedlam, and Alain Prost has pulled off. He is the provisional world champion, and we have absolute chaos here in Adelaide.
Well, of course, the thing is that Ayrton Senna stuck to his guns and just stayed in the car while everybody else got out of theirs. Of course, now he wants to be seen as the saintly, pure driver, and he wasn't going to. There's one of the Brabhams.
One of the Brabhams?
Two, aren't there? One of the Lotuses. That's Stefano Monitor. Now, of course, the thing is, thought he managed to get it going again. I thought he had terminal wheel spin there on the grass.
I can't begin to describe the chaos we have here in Adelaide. Ayrton Senna is your leader. We have no idea in all the mist and spray who is running second at this point. Watch him struggle to get it reined in.
I think it's that tow truck is second at the moment overall.
Could be an ambulance running in second place at this point because you have cars all over the race course, and we now have a red flag. There is Alain Prost standing in the garages on the McLaren team. It has now been downgraded, if you will, to a black flag. The race will absolutely be stopped. Alain Prost appears barely able to contain himself. This has been a weekend of such incredible stress for this man. Just when he thought he had his world championship locked up, there you see young J.J. Leto, the Finn, as his Onyx is decidedly the worst for wear. And the rest of the field moving slowly around. I'm sure what Alain Prost is telling the Australian interviewer is that this is absolute madness to run a race under these conditions.
Now, Ayrton Senna stopped in the most peculiar place. He's come round the top hairpin and stopped right in the middle of the road.
And there are other cars around him. Now one of the Benettons makes its way down the straightaway. We're watching Australian pictures, so we will take the opportunity to break away from Alain Prost doing his interview to describe what is going on. Sandro Nannini has pulled his Benetton to the start-finish line, raised his visor, and turned palms up to the starter, as if to ask what is going on. Behind him, Riccardo Patrese has pulled up. Well, at the head of the straightaway, Senna remains, along with one of the Dallaras I can see, one of the Brabhams, and the rest of the field is backing up behind Senna at the head of the straightaway.
Well, I can see more fines coming the way here, the Australian organisers. Monsieur Balestra, who's caused a fair amount of trouble the last couple of weeks, will probably signal back from Paris, where he is at the moment, to fine them $200,000 or $300,000 for making, quite honestly, a bit of a bish at the start of this. They either weren't strong enough for the drivers who did get out of the car, or they should have acceded to their wishes.
There you see the grouping at the head of the pit straightaway. Senna in the middle in the red and white, with the rest of the field gathered around him. Drivers now beginning to climb out of their cars. There is Gerhard Berger. We'll take this opportunity to stop the race, stop the television show, and we'll sort it out when we return. There is chaos in Adelaide, and you're watching on ESPN. First attempt at getting the Grand Prix of Australia underway. Here's what happened. In essence, a number of drivers approached the flag stand in the pouring rain to ask the flagmen not to start the race, to at least postpone it or to consider holding it for a longer period of time. While the drivers were standing there, the countdown was made to the start. They scrambled back to their race cars, began the parade lap. Before all of the cars were back in position, the green light flashed and the field was away. Shortly afterward, within 2 laps, there was a massive crash involving J.J. Leto's Onyx, and the race was totally stopped. Alain Prost, who is the tentative world champion, stomped off to the garage. They are arguing now over whether, in fact, he will restart the race. Let's get more from pit road now with John Bisignano.
Well, the argument is very hot down here between team boss Ron Dennis and Alain Prost. We asked Ron Dennis what the situation is, and he says the situation is, gentlemen, that drivers are paid to drive. And at the moment, we do not know if Alain Prost is going to show up here on the grid to take his number 2 starting position or to start from the pit lane. He is still sitting in the back of the garage. So right now, the world champion at this moment is still undecided what he's going to do.
All right, thank you, John. And while we await the final decision, we'll take a quick time out and return to the finale of the Formula One season. We will be back to Adelaide to see whether the new world champion will join his colleagues in a moment. Are back on the racetrack with the exception of one. Frenchman Alain Prost, the tentative world champion, has decided not to restart this race. Let's go down to John Bisignano.
Alain Prost, why did you come off the track?
Because we have decided with the drivers not to start the race at this moment because it was too dangerous, and everybody will agree. Everybody will agree. And then they decided to start the race, so it was too late, and all the drivers, I mean, most of the drivers came back in their car. So I started the race because of my team. I think it's important in this condition to start the race, and I did one lap because I don't agree with this decision. You know, I think, you know, the conditions are too dangerous. Maybe nothing happened. Now in this case, maybe I look like a cunt. but I don't care. I don't care, you know, about what people can say. I think the conditions are too dangerous, and it should have wet a bit more. You know, we wet half an hour delay. I think it should be good, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours. I don't know exactly, or maybe, you know, rest tomorrow. But I think it was too dangerous.
Thank you very much, Alain. He is paid to go racing, not to take dangerous risks.
Well, 25 men who feel that they are paid to take those risks are now rolling to the grid. The number 2 spot, formerly occupied by Prost, will not be used. You watch Nicola Larini wiping the rain from his eyes, and it has not let up. It is pouring down rain here in Adelaide, Australia. A brief driver rebellion asking officials not to start the race has been abandoned, and we will attempt to restart this race over the full 81 lap distance. Although under these conditions, it's unlikely that they will exceed 2 hours, and at the 2-hour mark, the race will be stopped under Formula One rules. There you see the final cars pulling into position, and now Larini is waving his hands. He must have stalled the engine.
Larini had a problem starting his car, and Jean Elise's car has been pushed back to the pits. So no doubt they're hoping to get that one started so they can start him in the Tyrrell from the pit lane after the field is gone.
They are pushing Larini off the racetrack. The light has gone green. The field is away. Great start for Pierluigi Martini in the yellow car to the left of your picture. He may get to the chicane before Ayrton Senna. No. The red and white McLaren is there first, followed by Martini. And behind them, the Benetton getting twitchy as we try to peer through this incredible rooster tail of mist being thrown up by these Formula One cars. Nigel Mansell, whom John talked about earlier as being in the infirmary, is in the race. He was quickly checked for any injuries in a warm-up crash that he had in his Ferrari. Mansell is now in the race in his backup car. There is Ayrton Senna. As we said before, the Rainmeister of Formula One. And under these conditions, David, I've got to suspect he's going to go out and lap the field.
Well, I think he probably will. And Martini is helping him inadvertently. Martini's put on a wonderful show this year, definitely the most improved driver. But the Pirelli rain tyres definitely aren't quite up to scratch. But as you can see, it's going to be the very devil of a job to overtake him through these streets of Adelaide. And the further back down that line you go, the worse that spray gets. And you can't even see where the line is, of course, so it's very tricky.
Now on to De Quetteville Terrace, which changes names on race weekend and becomes the Brabham Straight. In the dry, these cars were reaching speeds in excess of 170 miles an hour, considerably less than that, though, under these conditions. The scramble is here for second place. Martini to the right. To the left is Terry Boutsen in one of the 2 Williams Renaults. Behind him, his teammate, Riccardo Patrese in the second Williams. And as you said, David, it looks like Martini on those Pirelli wet weather tires is holding up the field. Boutsen looking left and right, trying to get around. And meanwhile, Ayrton Senna leaves nothing but tracks on the rain-dappled pavement of Adelaide, Australia. Young Pierluigi Martini, who broke a rib while driving his race car and was unable to run the race in Japan 2 weeks ago. But he is now back, and right now he is holding up the parade. Now Patrese to the left is going to try to get a lap up on his teammate as they come down the pit straightaway. There is no way to do it. It's like driving this car on a hockey rink.
Well, you try to pull out of the car in front so you can get some sort of a view, but boy, racing in conditions like this is very, very unpleasant. Boutsen ducking and diving all around the outside of Pierluigi Martini.
Trying to get by Martini. We talked about the Pirelli tires. The Goodyear tires are the same as Terry Boutsen, right there to the left of your screen, used to win the Grand Prix of Canada earlier this year on ESPN. Now Boutsen tries the inside, and Martini shuts the door.
But Martini's not going to give up easily here. This could be the chance of glory, because all it needs is a slip by Ayrton Senna at the front, and he could win a Grand Prix. But I think it's most unlikely on those Pirellis. And you can see those 3 Goodyear-shod cars stacked up right behind him.
Martini to the left of your screen, followed by Boutsen, Patrese, and Sandro Nannini.
Of course, the V10 engine cars of Boutsen and Patrese have a slight power advantage. Of course, they can't use that power today.
This is the battle for second place. Nannini throwing up a towering plume of spray, making it virtually impossible for the drivers behind him to see. Senna is your leader, followed by Martini, Boutsen, Patrese, Nannini. The next 5, Andrea De Cesaris, Nigel Mansell for Ferrari, Alex Caffey in the Dallara, Stefano Modena, Martin Brundle, and Derek Warwick in the 11th spot.
Patrese's desperately looking for place around his teammate Boutsen. Of course, Patrese led the race in Montreal for such a long time, only to have victory snatched away from him by Thierry when the undertrail on Patrase's car came off. And Ayrton Senna has got an absolutely incredible lead at the end of 2 laps. He's coming up at 12 seconds now. The other guy's really just in sight. So there we have a lead of 17 seconds in 2 laps. Down to Seguin is Thierry Gillen now. Hard to know where to go when the tracks are slippery. You want to get offline to get away from the rubber and oil that these cars have laid down. But of course in city streets there's all sorts of rubber and oil laid down there all the time. And of course it's the wrong mix of rubber and oil. The oil is always the wrong mix, but the rubber's the wrong sort of mixture.
Once again, David Hobbs working with a frog in his throat today as you watch Pierluigi Martini almost get sideways in front of Terry Boutsen. David suffering from a spring cold. It is spring down here. Santa Claus has come to Adelaide as Boutsen looks to the inside and Martini blocks him again.
And that was a bit of a bad move on Thierry because he should have just gone for that side in the first place. But now it's a bit of a chance down Rundle Street here because it's the longest straight. And he has got a bit more power. It's just a case of being able to use it's the problem.
And he does this time, I think. Takes the position away from Pierluigi Martini. They're getting onto the fastest part of the racetrack now. And we'll see how quickly Boutsen pulls away.
And of course now Patrese will be starting to get a bit worried. Because he doesn't know here he goes down to Ketteville. You've got to be so careful if you get offline and get to the puddles.
And as you see, Martini just enveloped in the spray behind the 2 Williams cars. So Patrese moves up into 3rd position. And now he and Terry Boutsen will try to set off in pursuit of the fastest man in Formula One when it comes to wet weather racing. Of course, Ayrton Senna is the fastest in the dry as well lately. But in rain, he simply has no peer.
Well, I think when it comes to driving skills, whatever you think of him as a person or his management skills or anything else, he's in a class of his own and probably the best we've seen in the last decade or 2. I mean, he's in a class on his own at the moment. There's no doubt about it.
Ayrton Senna's first Formula One win came in Portugal in a driving rainstorm. He was leading the race that this man, Terry Boutsen, won in Canada this year, but with 2 laps to go, his Honda engine blew up.
Of course, ironically, Ayrton Senna's very first race win was nearly the Monte Carlo Grand Prix of 1985, when they stopped the race short. A lot of people said to make sure that Alan Prost still won the race, but Ayrton Senna in the old Coleman was dragging it in at a great speed in his only his 2nd or 3rd Formula One start. So he's always had a tremendous affinity for the rain.
He has been the center of controversy all year long, and right now he is leading this race by a mile. Ayrton Senna leads over Pierluigi Martini, Boutsen, Patrese, Martini, Nannini, and De Cesaris. We'll be back to Adelaide, Australia in just a moment. Submarine races in Adelaide, Australia. Bob Barshow, a very froggy David Hobbs, and John Bizignano with you. You're watching incidents taking place around the racetrack. This is Emanuele Pirro in the Benetton Ford spinning one of an incalculable number of spins and crashes we've had thus far in this race. 15 cars remain on the lead lap. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the number of cars still in this race, as if we haven't had enough problem with restarts and driver controversies to date. We are also losing our video feed, and we're having a very difficult time telling you what's going on the racetrack because we don't have the electronic eyes of the cameras to tell us, but we'll do the best we can. Eddie Cheever running around right now carrying the only in-car camera remaining in the race. Ayrton Senna is your leader, followed by Terry Boutsen and Riccardo Patrese having a great dice right now. 27 seconds behind for Williams. Sandro Nannini runs 4th, followed by Nigel Mansell, steadily moving up for Ferrari, but he's 45 seconds behind Senna at this point. Pierluigi Martini has faded to 6th. Andrea De Cesaris has moved up to 7th. And the battle here is for 2nd place. Patrese has taken Terry Boutsen.
Quite a good bit of wheel banging went on there too. Patrese was not going to be denied. Now then, how much is he going to be fined for over-forceful and dangerous driving?
Oh! There's Nigel Mansell going around the Ferrari, and the wall is coming up, but he avoids this. Nicely done.
I think that was at the corner of De Ketteville and Rundle Road, too. Pretty quick corner, that. Jumped over the curb, high-sided it on the curb, it just kept spinning around, carried on as if nothing happened.
Here is another look, and we're watching it with you. I need to tell you this, folks. We are watching it by looking through the windows in our announce position to a broadcast television monitor 2 booths down that is watching the show on the air here on Australian TV. Our video monitors have just about given up the ghost, so we're kind of all crowding around somebody else's monitor a couple of booths over. We'll just keep hacking, though.
Now, the interesting thing is Patrese going to be able to pull away from Boutsen here. Probably will be able to. but I don't think he'll be able to make any real impression on Ayrton Senna.
There's a look out the back of Eddie Cheever's car as young J.J. Leto, the young Finn. Leto, and look, there's Prix off the racetrack. Boutsen is back through into second place with the benefit of that little off-course excursion by Ricardo.
Well, make Ricardo mad. Leto right behind one of the Brabhams there. Behind
this is the tail
Martin
cam. I'm
Brundle.
sorry, this is not on Eddie's car. This is on one of the Brabhams.
I think it's Martin Brundle in there.
Brundle running just ahead of Leto. That's 10th and 11th position. The 7 car is Brundle. And there's Senna. He must have spun, going very slowly on the racetrack. And making things even more fun, the front of our announce booth is now misting over. This is great.
Come to sunny Australia, they said.
Here comes Nelson Piquet, and Senna spins behind him. Struggling to regain control. He has not hit anything, but he may have perhaps damaged the cooling system there. Big burst of steam from Ayrton Senna's car. And there, a battle between a Yellow Lotus and Leto. Just behind Leto is Satoru Nakajima in the Lotus. Here's another look at what happened to Ayrton Senna.
That was a fairly substantial spin, that.
Several fairly substantial spins.
Makes it dizzy to watch it.
Note the back of the car. That is twice the amount of downforce producing rear wing that these guys were running in the dry on Friday and Saturday. Everybody opting for incredible downforce to try to hold these cars on this hockey rink of a racetrack.
Coming up to pass Olivier Grouillard in the Ligier. The other one, of course, of René Arnoux is already out.
As soon as he comes by, we'll try to give you some idea of how much time Ayrton Senna sacrificed right there. There may be a pit stop in his immediate future. Senna getting sideways. One of the cars already out of the race to the right of your picture. That was René Arnoux Ligier, ending his career a little bit earlier than he had hoped. It is hard to describe the situation here in Adelaide, ladies and gentlemen. Pouring down rain. The problems that we had earlier this year in Spa, Belgium, when water got into the camera work there, caused us a few problems.
The trouble is now the rain is falling much quicker than these tires are getting rid of it, and the road is progressively getting much, much more slippery.
Down the front straightaway, here comes Ayrton Senna through the mist and the haze. He has not stopped. Evidently feeling he didn't damage his Honda McLaren or his Goodyear rain tires. Senna leads. His gap now down under 28 seconds. Terry Boutsen right there runs in second position. Ricardo Patrese, who was second before spinning off, now third to the right of your picture. Behind him, Sandro Nannini in the Benetton. Nigel Mansell up to fifth for Ferrari. We'll take a quick timeout. You won't miss anything, and I guarantee there'll be something to show you when we get back. You're watching the final round of the Formula One World Championship. Back in Adelaide, where you watch Andrea de Cesaris with his third spin of this lap, but that's not what's important. This is, look at the right front corner, left front if you're the driver, as Ayrton Senna is. He has torn off the wheel of his McLaren Honda, and this means the end of World Championship aspirations for Ayrton Senna. John Bizignano is standing by in the McLaren pits as Ayrton comes in, but this absolutely has to be the end for him, John.
Bob, we are here. Ayrton Senna very slowly, taking a moment to get out. The whole left front corner of his car is missing. Everyone looking a bit chagrined here. You said earlier a puff of smoke. I think that's because of the spray. Ayrton Senna getting out of the car now. We also saw that one of the Brabhams was missing its rear wing. I don't know if they came together or not out on the circuit, but definitely Ayrton Senna is now, under any court ruling, will never be the 1989 world champion of Formula One racing.
And both Delaras, here we see Caffey spinning and getting his car up into the bank there, gives it and breaks the back wing off. We've already seen Andrea de Cesaris, whose car is high-sided and he can't get any grip. So both Delaras have spun out. And of course, the tragedy is Ayrton Senna has made a mistake somewhere, which really was a bit unnecessary. The guy had a 25-second lead, but there it is. He could have just cooled it a bit.
We saw at least two large spins by Ayrton Senna. And when a man with his skills in the wet weather spins, you know that it is absolutely treacherous out there. Which raises the question, as Alex Caffey is escorted off, raises the question, David, should the race be continued under these circumstances?
Well, I think if the rain continues to fall, and it's obviously getting worse and worse and worse, there'll have to come a time when they red flag this race and either wait and call it a race, or do it again, or call it a race. But of course, unless it's down the third distance, you can't call it a race.
They have not removed the Dallara of Andre de Cesaris, which I would say is in a hazardous position. Meanwhile, this is your new race leader, Terry Boutsen. Recall that he won in Canada earlier this year when Ayrton Senna, far and away the leader at that point, suffered an engine malfunction. And so it looks as though, at least at this point, rain might once again be the greatest friend of Terry Boutsen. He is the leader by 10 seconds over his teammate Riccardo Patrese. Another second back, Sandro Nannini for Benetton. 5 seconds further in arrears, Nigel Mansell now up to 4th in the Ferrari. And then it is about 40 seconds back to Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi. Eddie Cheever runs 6th with the in-car camera aboard the Arrows. Satoru Nakajima 7th. 8th is J.J. Leto. 9th, Nelson Piquet. And 10th, Emanuele Pirro.
Well, so much for our pick 6. One of them didn't start, and the other one crashed out.
Ah, well, that's baseball. Under these conditions, maybe we'll suspend the pick 6, especially since you're leading, I think, on the season. There is Alex Caffey, I believe, making his way back to the pits, and I've got to wonder if any cars are going to finish this race. We are nowhere even close to halfway. Let's get more on Ayrton Senna's situation right now from John on the pit lane.
As they push Ayrton Senna's car back into the garage for the last time this year, we found out who he actually came in contact with. It was the problem of Martin Brundle. That car also entered the pit lane. We'll let you know his damage. It did not seem too extensive at the moment he came in. But it was definitely Martin Brundle out there somewhere in the spray making contact with Ayrton Senna.
17 cars remain in the race. Stefano Modena, last guy on the totem pole. 11 are on the lead lap. Now, we mentioned at the top of the show, Ayrton Senna had to win this race. There you see Caffey's car being lifted off the racetrack. Senna had to win this race to have any hope of defending his world championship, even if he could convince the world governing body that he should not have been disqualified in Japan. Although the chances of that, to hear the talk up and down the pit lane, are slim and none to begin with. But either way now, Alain Prost has his 3rd world championship, and it cannot be taken away.
And we're not missing him, but here's Patrese, a long way behind his teammate. Patrese has slipped way back down to the field.
There goes Sandro Nannini out the bottom of your picture in the Benetton, a battle going on behind. Nannini, along with his teammate Emanuele Pirro, was using development Ford V8 engines, the exclusive Benetton-only Ford V8, but they damaged both engines in practice and qualifying, and so they are running with their standard setup here in Adelaide.
As is the Renault of Thierry Boutsen. They had a Series 5 engine in their car. Apparently he buzzed it badly this morning in warm-up. That's a euphemism, saying he made a mistake.
He put his foot on the floor without the clutch out and ran it up to about 15,000 RPM.
And of course it's going to be very interesting to see how this team, the Benetton Fords, do next year with John Barnard moving there from Ferrari. The Ferrari is unquestionably the best handling car at the moment, but not doing very well this afternoon. Not as well as we all thought it would by a long way.
Well, I certainly hope you're watching Sandro Nannini. It looks like him out the bottom of our monitors here in Adelaide as we lose our video feed once again. Terry Boutsen is your leader. Sandro Nannini on a roll at a 2nd place position. Nigel Mansell is 3rd. Nigel Mansell has spun off the racetrack, and his displeasure is obvious. Terry Boutsen leads. This man, Sandro Nannini, runs in 2nd position. Oh, no, he's passing now. That is Boutsen behind him.
Pirro's being lapped. Boutsen's just lapped.
Well, let me start over.
Emanuele Pirro. But Nigel Mansell disappeared off the road then at a huge rate of knots backwards. And I'm sure that in a moment, here we go. Coming up from the right is your red car.
Airborne.
Somewhat
backwards into the wall.
It's too fast to go backwards out. You just can't look over your shoulder well enough, especially all his wings getting away.
And the steering goes from front to rear.
Now he wants him to push it out, but he doesn't know at that stage just how badly damaged his car is. And when he does, you can see that wheel throwing incident.
There's young Emanuele Pirro driving the Benetton, presently shown in 10th position. And behind him In the black and orange and yellow helmet is Terry Boutsen, the number 5 Williams Renault, the race leader at this point.
Very hard for Pirot to know that Boutsen's there, because Pirot is really concentrating on what he's doing today. He's not too interested in what's behind him. And there's Griard spinning.
And spinning and spinning, and that's what happens when you've got an inch of water on the racetrack. The car just never slows down. And given the camber of these streets, remember, this is not a racetrack, these are city streets, the car just starts sliding downhill and will not stop. It all has to do with tires, and John has more on that from the pit lane.
Well, basically what happened to Nigel Mansell was that he lost adhesion and maybe the car aquaplaned. Now, what Goodyear tries to do to keep these 4 patches of rubber on the road is a very deep treaded tire. This is airspace where on a racing slick you see nothing but rubber, but here a very deep treaded gator back. You can see the angles that the tread go at. All this is for to expel water off of the track, not out of from underneath the tire. Not only do that, but a very soft rubber compound. Now, usually in a half-dry, half-wet atmosphere, you'll actually see them staying to the wet side of the track, but that very soft compound does not wear out. They won't have trouble with that here today at Adelaide. It is absolutely flooded.
Back on the racetrack, we have a very interesting tactical war here. There is Emanuele Pirot. His teammate, Alessandro Nannini, is running in second position right now. You saw Terry Boutsen wave from the car to the right of your screen. He figures he is being blocked by Pirot so that Pirot's teammate Nannini can close in. Right now, he is 2.5 seconds behind.
He closed in a lot, too. I mean, he's lost about 5 seconds on this lap. So he will be definitely on the peeved side.
There is Sandro Nannini to the right of your screen, and Terry Boutsen has just gotten by with a wave. I think you need both hands on the wheel at this point, Terry.
I don't think he's saying well driven Emanuele somehow. Now then, the thing is, see, Pirot lets his own teammate through very easily. It could be, one doesn't want to be uncharitable, but it could be that there was some radio communication between the pits and Pirot there, telling him to make sure that Boutsen did not get past without a fight.
And this is the battle now for first place. Terry Boutsen, with 1 World Championship victory to his credit this year in Canada, being chased by Sandro Nannini, also a solo winner in Japan just 2 weeks ago when Ayrton Senna was disqualified. Bringing you up to date, Senna has crashed out of this Australian Grand Prix, and his chances of retaining his World Championship are now nil. Alain Prost started the initial green light in this Australian race, but after 2 laps in teeming rain, it was stopped. Prost refused to restart. Nevertheless, he will retain his 3rd World Championship that he originally won 2 weeks ago in Japan before Senna and Team McLaren threatened to appeal Senna's disqualification in that race.
But what a sour World Championship this will be for Alain Prost, refusing to drive today because it's dangerous, winning the thing on appeal in Japan, which everybody's going to fight for a long time yet in court. It's not a happy day for him. He's world champion admittedly, but there are other years when he would have been a much, much more worthy champion.
There has been a plethora, if I may say, of conflicting press releases and battling press releases. It's been the battle of the fax machine here in Australia, as Jean-Marie Balès, the president of the FISA in Paris, has been doing verbal battle and a paper war with Ron Dennis of Team McLaren. The most recent shot fired by Balès in Paris, who said the FIA will name the FIA Formula One World Champion. No force, political or legal power in the world outside the FIA can change this decision. For the ones who will be at war, I'm sorry to say that there will be a few heads, even prestigious ones, that will risk a fall. A quote from Jean-Marie Balès, aimed no doubt at Team McLaren, the dominant force in Formula One over the last 2 years.
Well, one of those heads that may fall may in fact be that of Mr. Balès himself, and there'll be a lot of people out there who will be very happy to see that happen.
He is the soul of an enigma. Tends to shoot from the hip when it comes to judgments to be made at racetracks. Of course, he would dispute that judgment on my part heartily. Nevertheless, Monsieur Balès has bounced from one crisis to another in motorsport over the last few years, touching all forms of the sport, rallying, sports cars, and Formula One. It's going to be a very interesting winter, and we'll be back to the Formula One finale in Adelaide, Australia, after these words.
Ooh. That's a big one. Just didn't see him in the
Back in Adelaide, you're watching Piercarlo Ghenzani in his final Formula One race, climbing from the wreckage of his Osella. He has just had a mammoth collision driving right up the back of one of the Lotuses. I'm not sure which car it was. There is Emanuele Pirro.
I think it was the other way around. I think the Lotus ran to the back of him. I think the Lotus was coming up to pass him, and obviously just didn't see him in the spray.
You're right.
It was Nelson Piquet.
Nelson Piquet, the three-time world champion. Pierluigi Martini, to the right of your screen, manages to slide out of harm's way. He nearly got rear-ended by the hard reversing Lotus.
Well, I think at this stage the marshals and the FIA people here may well consider calling this race off. Nelson Piquet there was trying to get around the car of Dorini and Pierluigi Martini.
And Ghenzani is obviously hurt. He is limping away from the car.
Couldn't see him in the spray and just ran right into the back of him, which of course is the biggest danger of racing in extremely heavy rain conditions, is the fact you just can't see.
There are 7 cars remaining on the lead lap. To the best of my count, there are 11 remaining in the race. Remember, the record attrition here is 8 cars finishing from 26 starters back in 1985. Boutsen is your leader, followed by Sandro Nannini. Riccardo Patrese is third, 17 seconds behind the battle for the lead. Eddie Cheever is running in 4th position, and what a great day it could be for Eddie as you look out the front of his car. This will be his final Formula One start for the Arrows team. Next year he will move on to the Tom Walkinshaw Jaguar team in Group C sports car and IMSA racing in the United States.
He must be coming down near the trouble spot, so there'll be lots of yellow flags flying shortly for him.
He will no doubt be told when he goes by the pits to take it very, very carefully, because he is in a position to take 4th place as things presently stand.
This is that slippery part where we've seen 2 or 3 people go right up onto that curb on the outside.
And now he's approaching the scene of the accident. It's at the far end of this straightaway where cars were reaching 179 miles an hour in practice. Something less than that at this point, you can be sure.
A lot of debris on the track here. He needs to be careful not to run over any of it. He's got most of it cleared away.
Watch him fight the wheel. Absolutely treacherous. Now you're looking out the back of one of the Brabhams. No! Oh, that's what happened to Senna. That is Senna running into the back of Martin Brundle's car.
Absolutely. That was a bit of a quick replay we could have done with a bit of warning. That was coming up.
Absolutely.
But
Thanks a lot, guys.
I was just about to say, look at the spray coming off the back of that car, and out of the spray comes Ayrton Senna. Yeah, well, that just shows you exactly. Here it comes again.
This is the decisive moment in the World Championship. The Lotus off to the left, and here comes the leader right into your living room, folks.
Right, the worst possible thing there. The Lotus was what? Ayrton Senna thought he was passing. And of course there's a huge cloud of spray, and in the spray was hidden the slower car of Martin Brundle, who was also being passed by the Lotus. And of course that is the problem. And more or less exactly the same thing happened to Nelson Piquet just a few laps later.
Piquet ran up the back of Piercarlo Ghenzani and knocked them both from the race. You're back aboard with Eddie Cheever, who goes by the nickname Labrador up and down the Formula One pit lane because he likes wet conditions so much. If we could talk to him right now, I'd like to ask him that question, if he likes these conditions very much. There is Satoru Nakajima in the second Lotus running up behind him. Nakajima will attempt to pass to Ketfield Terrace, the long straightaway known as the Brabham Straight. I'd like to wish happy birthday to former Formula One world champion Sir Jack Brabham. Had a birthday just last Thursday. In fact, his son Jeff, the 2-time IMSA sports car champion, was billed at least as planning to attend this race and drive a little demonstration lap in a Nissan Group C car. He never did turn up, maybe because he saw that everywhere they billed his presence, they spelled his name J-E-F-F instead of G-E-O-F-F, Brabham. What a way to treat your favorite son.
And there we see Jeff Boutsen doing extremely well in the rain so far. The second fine showing by Boutsen in the rain, and I can attest to his qualities of car control, having been skiing with him some 4 years ago. He drove us from village to village in his street BMW, and it was some of the most exciting driving I've ever been involved in.
There is Sandro Nannini, and it is Nannini this time. That's not Pirro. That is Nannini running in second place, presently shown 4 seconds behind Terry Boutsen.
And right behind him is Martini in the remaining Minardi, and it's obvious that all the Pirelli shod cars are having a very, very tough time of it here in the rain.
What a season we have had in Formula One. 11 cars remain here in Adelaide. 54 men, a record nomination of drivers, have shared Formula One racetracks around the country. We have had crashes from the very first turn of the first lap at Rio, and there is more to come here in Adelaide.
Better manage money, people, property, and equipment.
For the 10 European Grand Prix, all the F1 teams have the luxury of well-organized transporters. But for the other 6 championship events that take place all around the world, and especially the last 2 in Japan and Australia, they require the expertise of Alan Woolard from the FIA to organize 3 jumbo jets packed with cars and spares. Some 500,000 pounds of equipment is transported halfway around the world for the last 2 championship events. Ferrari alone transported 40,000 pounds of just spares. Well, there was 200 kilos of pasta in there for the team. But no matter how well organized it is, it's still the nightmare of every team manager to be out on the flyaway events, needing the one spare left back at the factory to give them that last bit of lap time speed or possibly a victory. McLaren's solution is to bring everything, illustrated by these 15 rear wings, transport halfway around the world for only 2 race cars. This all goes to illustrate that Formula One is truly the biggest show on earth.
What began a few days ago as Formula One controversy, this morning became Formula One chaos, and today in Adelaide, Australia, with 26 laps complete, it is Formula One carnage. Fortunately, all of a mechanical variety. Just moments ago, Olivier Grillard suffered a tremendous spin, backed his Ligier into the wall with incredible force, and dropped out of the race in a big way, leaving 10 cars after 26 of a scheduled 81 laps. We are not near halfway, and already we have got 16 cars on the sidelines. Let's go down quickly to John Vizignano in the pits.
Bob, you say we're not already halfway. Halfway is where the officials can red flag this race, bring it to a stop. It's idiotic behavior. It's so wet down here. And everyone would receive half points. Now, they have to let it go 3/4 of the way to actually receive full points or be considered a full race. Also, you've seen 2 accidents where the drivers could not see someone in front of them because of the spray. Let me show you. The only thing that these drivers have to follow is this little rain light right on the box of the gear, right on the gearbox. This is the Benetton Ford spare car we're using. Nothing but this rain light can tell the other drivers who's in front of them or if anything's in front of them. Sometimes it's called the guiding light. Well, with the amount of spray that's coming up off these big rear tires, you don't have to be very far back for this guiding light to disappear into the mist.
Well, the guy, the starter standing on the rostrum, has got the red flag in his hand as we speak. Is he about to wave it? And if so, will they then wait to continue this race to get the half distance, or will they call it a day?
You're watching Eddie Cheever in the USF&G Arrows in his final Formula One start, presently shown in 6th position, so he is now fading. He was up in 4th at one point. He has since been passed by Satoru Nakajima's Lotus and young J.J. Leto, the Finn, in his Onyx car. So as the starter stands with furled red flag in hand, we are still a long way from halfway. Your leader is Terry Moonson with a 5.4. There is the flag man, just to the left of that aluminum tower, with the red flag furled behind his back. Glenn Dix is the man's name, who's become something of a local celebrity for his finish line checkered flag technique. He handles it with great style. Unfortunately, we may get to see him wave it with a great deal of sadness today. The race has been an absolute zoo since the very beginning.
Piero, of course, who was running way, way, way down, is now up to 8th position. Another couple of crashes and he'll be getting points. J.J. Leto is in a position now where he will in fact pick up 2 championship points in only his 2nd Grand Prix start.
There's your leader making his way around Stefano Modena, and they are really tippy-toeing now.
Gingerly.
Excuse me, you, David. Terry Boutsen remains your leader by 5 seconds over Sandro Nannini. Riccardo Patrese has faded to 36 seconds behind Nannini. Satoru Nakajima, which could be his best finish ever, is 1 minute and 14 seconds down to Patrese, followed by J.J. Leto, Eddie Cheever, and then Pierluigi Martini is the first of the cars 1 lap down. Emanuele Pirro is a lap down. Mauricio Guglielmin is a lap down. Stefano Modena is 2 laps down. And those are the only 10 cars remaining in this very star-crossed and rain-washed Grand Prix of Australia.
And the flag has not been waved. Thierry Boutsen crossed the start-finish line, and the flag was not waved.
One has to think at this point they're just counting the laps to halfway. It will not affect the World Championship at this point. That has already been clinched by Alain Prost, who refused to start this race. And that is not unprecedented. A year or so ago, Alain Prost refused to run the British Grand Prix at the ultra-quick Silverstone circuit because of rain. He pulled out early and parked the car, said this is simply too dangerous. Off to the left looked like J.J. Leto might have parked the Onyx on the Brabham Straight here in Adelaide. You're watching Eddie Cheever making his way around like an unlimited hydroplane. All the drivers by now must know of the incredible toll this race has taken thus far. As he moves in on the already lapped number 8 Brabham of Stefano Modena, we'll take a quick timeout and return to Adelaide after this. Coming up later today here on ESPN, calendars for March 11th of 1990, but we'll be bringing you the Formula One kickoff in that year. The Grand Prix of the United States from Phoenix, Arizona. If you'd like to get tickets, you can mail the Phoenix Grand Prix people your request at 342 West Jefferson Street in Phoenix, Arizona, 85003. All a part of Formula One 1990 here on ESPN. You're watching Riccardo Patrese running in 3rd position in his Williams Renault. His teammate Terry Boutsen leads and has set fast lap at this point. So what has started out as a McLaren-dominated weekend has quickly turned in favor of Frank Williams and his team. There is the gap from Riccardo Patrese in 3rd to Sandro Nannini, fairly substantial at this point. 9 cars remain in the race. Boutsen has now reset fast lap at 1 minute 40.791 seconds. Compare that, if you will, to the record qualifying lap set by Ayrton Senna yesterday at 1:16.665. It's knocked about 40 miles an hour in average speed off of this racetrack, a place where the cars commonly lap at an average of better than 110 miles an hour. They're lucky to be doing 80 at this point.
Yeah, and of course this will be a great season finale for Thierry Boutsen, who's had a bit of a lackluster season, really. And they say in racing that you're only as good as your last race. That's the race that people remember. And of course that's one of the reasons why Mr. Leto was hanging in there. He's dropped back quite a bit now. We don't know what happened to him.
Out of the mist and the fog comes Riccardo Patrese, the number 6 Williams. If you weren't with us at the start, in a pouring rain, the drivers asked that the race be delayed, if not postponed. While they were standing there talking to FIA officials, the Australian organizers, who had not been told otherwise, continued to flash the boards, saying 5 minutes, 3 minutes to start, and with about 60 seconds to go, the driver meeting broke up in disgust. The drivers went to their race cars. Half of them got away. Eventually the entire field started, but half of the field was still out on the racetrack warming up as the green flag, or the green light that is, sent the field on their way. Finally, J.J. Leto crashed, and that brought out a red flag. When the cars were stopped, the drivers all got out. Once again, they tried to organize a group effort to get the organizers to delay the race. Alain Prost, the only one among them who absolutely refused to restart. Once underway, Ayrton Senna flashed out to an enormous lead, but just about 20 laps into the race, was blinded by the mist and drove right up the back of Martin Brundle's Brabham. Senna now out of the race. Prost clinches the World Championship. Meanwhile, your leader is Terry Boutsen, leading 10 cars remaining. There is Frank Williams. At one point, one of the fittest gentlemen in Formula One, before a road accident 2 years ago confined him to a wheelchair. And, of course, the owner of this car, the Williams Renault engine Williams car of Thierry Boutsen.
Frank had a lot of faith in Thierry. And of course, I suppose his most famous faith driver was Nigel Mansell. When everybody had really counted Nigel out after many years at Lotus, Frank Williams picked him up, and he got off to a bit of a slow start, and then suddenly he won the extra race in Brands Hatch, England, and suddenly went on to a tremendous role over the next 2 years with the Williams and Honda engine cars. Thierry's sliding around. It's obviously very slippery just down here. We've had quite a few people slide off, and you can see the rain falling on the road there.
I was about to mention that. You can see it falling on the roadway. It has not let up throughout the day. I've got to believe we've had at least 2 inches of rain here. You see the hardy Australian crowd still hanging in. They were estimating over 100,000 people here today. They've gotten something decidedly less than that. And look at the marshmallows of spray thrown up by Terry Boutsen.
I think, of course, they'll have a fairly big crowd because a lot of these tickets were pre-sold. But I guess a lot of people just decide to pass on the occasion, whereas the tickets in front of us, for instance, are $325 for the 4-day weekend. So I guess if you bought one of those, you'd be a bit loath to stay away today.
It's all a part of a great celebration here in Adelaide, bringing out the summer season, which of course includes Christmas about a month and a half from now. There have been balls, there have been counter balls called not necessarily the Grand Prix ball. There have been tuxedos galore and beautiful ball gowns. There have been parades. There was a foot race held on this race course. The Australians have really gone to great lengths to make this an exciting weekend and a great value for the spectators as you watch Sandro Nannini running around in second place, 24.5 seconds down to the leader, Terry Boutsen. Boutsen, Nannini, Patrese, 51 seconds in arrears to the leader. Satoru Nakajima may equal his best ever Formula One finish in 4th, followed by Eddie Cheever and Pierluigi Martini.
There's a rough road. Red grandstand looks over the backstretch and gives a few hundred lucky spectators a cool, quiet place to escape the massive Formula One crowds. Just blocks from the central downtown area, the racing circuit winds its way 2.3 miles through neighborhoods and past businesses, with prime viewing locations all along the race route. Speaking of city streets, as in the country's original colonizer, England, one drives not on the right side, but, as we might say in America, on the wrong side. Adelaide is known as a city of churches, and the beautiful structures are on nearly every street corner. The Australians honor their dead from the World Wars each year on Remembrance Day, with ceremonies at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. All of Adelaide is presided over by Colonel William Light, who stands guard over his beloved city day and night.
Back in Adelaide, and let's hear a cheer for Satoru Nakajima, the much maligned, I must say, Japanese driver in Formula One who was basically taken on, according to the rumors, for his sponsor money as a second to Nelson Piquet at Lotus. But today, with Piquet out of the race, having collided with Piercarlo Ghinzani, Satoru Nakajima is running in 4th position. First time this year in the points. He has just put Pierluigi Martini another lap down. Let's go down to the pit lane now and John Bizignano.
Bob, you were talking earlier about J.J. Leto slowing. He's actually stopped now out on the circuit. The team management doesn't know what went wrong because he has not reported back in yet. Martin Brundle's car took a heck of a shot. Yes, it did take Senna out, but it broke all the stays on the rear wing. The rear wing was falling off the car when he came into the pits. This whole area was damaged so bad, and what holds this stay onto the car was completely caved in that they were not able to put another rear wing on. So Brundle also retired from the very wet Australian Grand Prix because of that impact with Senna.
Thank you, John. And very wet. It's really a shame that the race has become such a drudge after it's been such a great week here in Australia. There you see Pierluigi Martini still laboring around on the Pirelli rain tires that, as David mentioned earlier, are not reckoned to be up to the snuff of the Goodyear tires on cars such as this. Emanuele Pirro in the Benetton, presently shown in 7th position, 2 laps down, makes that 1 lap down to the leaders.
There's the quality of people in that grandstand still, braving the elements. Of course, normally they would expect to be bathed in hot Australian sunshine today, but Pirro wiping his visor there. Big problem in weather like this. It gets dirty on the outside, and of course it mixes up inside. But once it starts doing that, you're in big trouble.
I expect we're going to see a lot of cars running by themselves at this point. We have but 9 remaining in the race. As John mentioned, Leto is now out. It is Boutsen by 24 seconds over Nannini. Another 27 seconds back to Riccardo Patrese. 31 seconds further in arrears is Satoru Nakajima. A minute and 24 seconds and 1 lap down is Eddie Cheever in 5th position. Pierluigi Martini is 1 lap plus 26 seconds down. Emanuele Pirro, 1 lap and 7 seconds behind Martini, followed by Maurizio Gugelmin, 2 laps down, 51 seconds behind Pirro. And in 9th place, Stefano Modena. On board once again with Eddie Cheever, who was laboring around with a broken strut on the left side of his car and short shifting, as John mentioned earlier. Having to drive at low revs, but in this kind of weather, David, that's no big deal.
No, and he certainly wouldn't stop to have a misfire looked at this afternoon, because he's probably pretty glad he's got it. Cuts down the power available to the rear wheels. I think we'll be here for about another 4 laps at the most, and starter will wave that red flag as we have the half distance, and the race will be over, and the World Championship will be over for 1989.
Starter Glenn Dix has had the red flag in his hand for the last dozen laps or so. Oh, Eddie having to struggle to keep it under control. Just look at the sheen on that racetrack. It is absolutely diabolical out here, and when you've got 600 or so horsepower under your foot, that is really a handful. The car only weighs about 1,100 pounds.
There you see him moving on to East Terrace. A little left-to-right jog here. See what I mean about the houses being right to the edge of the road here. Comes up to Rundle Street, one of the main streets in Adelaide. Downtown is to our left there. He turns right, goes out of town. A bit of a downhill. The Ketteville Terrace he's just going to turn onto is one of the main highways out to the suburbs.
We have 1 lap to go to the red flag. I may be getting ahead of myself there. We have 1 lap to go to halfway when David, and I would imagine just about everybody else on this racetrack, anticipates that we will see the red flag. And that is, in fact, a shame.
Now to the hairpin Whittaker Road. Now he's turning left into the park, and he's coming up to what is obviously a very slippery part. Goes to that left-hander. Now to pass the left-hander, and there's obviously a lot of warts on the road here, because everybody's been giving some real big twitches as they go through that.
Eddie Cheever making his way around in 5th place, 1 lap down to your leader, Terry Boutsen, Sandro Nannini, Riccardo Patrese, and Satoru Nakajima holding station. Boutsen remains the leader of the Grand Prix of Australia, and he was not shown the red flag at halfway. So this, too, is an interesting development in what has been an entire afternoon of interesting developments. Coming up Tuesday, November 7th here on ESPN, more great boxing action. Tuesday, November 7th here on ESPN. Looking down from high above the Adelaide street circuit, Bob Varsha, David Froggy Hobbs, and John Bizignano have been with you through a very eventful final round of the Formula One World Championship. After 15 races on so many countries, 5 continents or so, it has come down to this. 9 cars remain of 26 starters at the halfway point. John Bizignano has a word with Derek Warwick.
Derek Warwick, was this the wettest race you've ever competed in, and do you think it should still be going on?
It is one of the wettest races I've ever been in, and I don't think the race should have started. We as drivers tried to do a sort of a protest at the start of the race, but of course we were rushed into starting, and what happened was 10 cars went off on the first lap, which is what we were trying to say would happen. Nobody was hurt, so at the end of the day, everybody's smiling. But it could have been very bad, very serious.
Okay, they've gone half distance now. If the race was stopped at this point, they would get half points. The race has gone half distance, Derek. If the race was stopped now, everyone would get half points. Why are they leaving them out there on the track?
I think it's crazy. It's actually raining more now than what it was earlier on, and I think that's dangerous. I mean, as it is now, they're all into the groove, so it's not such a problem. But you're still... fewer cars out there, what you're going to get is bigger puddles build up because you're having less cars go round, and there's going to be more chance of an accident. And, you know, we don't want anybody hurt. That's the last thing we want.
Thank you very much, Derek. And actually, the Arrows team is in a very tough battle for 5th place in the Constructors' Championship, as is Lotus and Tyrrell. So those points are just as important to the people down the grid as Aiden Senna and and, of course, Alain Prost.
Thank you, John, and I would imagine that has gone through the minds of the race organizers. There is a great battle going on for 5th place. Tyrrell's team has 16 points, Arrow's 13, the Lotus team 12, and the Dallara team 8, as does the Brabham team.